Hey everyone, this is Mason. Just a quick shout out and a huge thank you to all of our HerbRally Schoolhouse members. Your support is so appreciated and it helps us keep the lights on, as they say, here at both HerbRally and the podcast. If you'd like to support our podcast by becoming a member of the HerbRally Schoolhouse, you can do so for only $10 per month. You can try your first 30 days for free with coupon code podcast at checkout, and you can learn more and register at herbalist.com/schoolhouse. And in addition, members get access to exclusive videos, classes, audio and monographs, a private Facebook group, discounts to herbal companies, and more. So one more time, learn more at herbalist.com/schoolhouse. And don't forget to use the coupon code podcast at checkout to get your first 30 days for free. One more time, a huge thanks to all of our HerbRally Schoolhouse members. Now on to the show. Enjoy. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the show. The content in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to cure, diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. This information has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. We are not doctors, nor do we play one on the internet. Please seek advice from a qualified healthcare professional. Okay, MC Calico, take it away.
Yeah. Smoking herbal blends. We need some mullein and some kush, my brethren. While listening to HerbRally podcast again. Herbalism at its finest with Mason Hutchinson. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. I'm excited to have on Tesia Love today, and I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I'm going to read her bio, since she actually provided it for me. So here we go. Tesia Love is a certified Ayurvedic practitioner, clinical herbalist, 500-hour registered yoga teacher, and licensed massage and bodywork therapist from Charlotte, North Carolina. Tesia first started studying the traditional healing system of Ayurveda nearly 20 years ago and has spent the past 9 years professionally helping her clients transform their health through this profound science. Tesia is a graduate of the California College of Ayurveda, Duke Integrative Medicine's Integrative Health Coaching Training, and numerous other wellness training and mentorship programs. So welcome to the show, Tesia.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk.
Of course. In fact, I want to say it might have been via LinkedIn. Am I remembering correctly?
Right. Yes, that's where we spoke recently. And I think we were connected a couple of years ago. But just recently reconnected through LinkedIn. It's a great tool.
It really is. Yeah. So if you're not, dear listener, on LinkedIn and you're looking to network with other herbalists and whatnot, there's a lot going on in the LinkedIn realm. I know it's just another social media platform that you got to pick up, but it's been really valuable for me. And again, like Tesia's here because, we kind of connected via LinkedIn as well as, probably some other social media platform previously. But I'm curious to get to know Tesia a little bit more. I'm very curious. How did you get into herbalism?
Right. Well, I've always been interested. In hindsight, looking back on my life, I can see that I've always been interested in nature, plants. There's a family history there. I'm like you mentioned, I'm from Charlotte, and my parents are from York, South Carolina, which is just 40 minutes south of Charlotte. And on my father's side, they were farmers. So like my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my uncles went to farmers markets with them on Saturdays in my teen years, selling tomatoes and peaches. And so just always interested in nature. And then herbalism in particular really came about from my studies in Ayurveda. Because I've always been interested in things, natural health and wellness. And over the years, or, say 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I knew innately, I think that herbs were powerful. And so I really didn't use them because I didn't know how to use them. So I wasn't drawn to just kind of experiment at will with them. But once I started formally studying Ayurveda, studying herbalism, that's a big part of Ayurveda is Ayurvedic herbology and herbalism. That's when the light bulb really went off for me about herbs and using them clinically as well as personally in your life. But that's where I really learned about different types of herbs, Western herbs, as well as Ayurvedic and traditionally Indian herbs, and how to use them in teas and food, and then clinically as well. But yeah.
Where did you say, I know you're from Charlotte, but where are you living these days?
I'm still in Charlotte.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, at the time that I started studying through the California College of Ayurveda, I was doing their virtual program that was a combination of live in-person classes, as well as going out there for in-person intensives, or live virtual classes, and then went out there for intensive. So I was in the DC area at the time.
Okay.
I lived in the DC area for about 12 years. And was immersed, even though I had a full-time job working in the nonprofit sector in marketing and communications, and in an environmental organization. I worked for Environmental Defense Fund while I was up there. I also have had this interest in natural health. So I was doing things like studying yoga, belly dance as a healing art. Awesome. And then in 2011, I was still up there. That's when I decided to formally start studying Ayurveda. And so in 2014, I moved back to Charlotte to be closer to family. I was getting tired of the DC hustle and bustle. And I'm really glad that I did, because I continued my studies in Ayurveda. I started working clinically with clients in 2013, and then continued studies when I moved down to Charlotte. It's definitely been a journey and a process that have evolved to get to where I am right now. But being able to be back in Charlotte and have space, because I have a garden in my parents' yard, and then I have a balcony as well that's looking out on nature. I just had more access, I felt.
Sure.
To nature, and so things continue to evolve that way too, as far as my own study of herbalism through actually getting in the garden and communing with plants that way.
Yeah, I want to talk to you later on about cooking and potentially Southern food, and then combining that with Ayurveda, but we'll get to that later. I did want to shout out the Chesapeake Herb Gathering. They're in the DC, Maryland area. I went there one time, and it's just, I always love knowing that there's these little nooks and crannies, that every pocket has its own herbal community going on. So I am curious, is there a thriving herbal community, would you say, in Charlotte? I do know of an herbalist named Brandon Ruiz who runs I want to say it's called the Charlotte Herbal Accessibility Project. And so you were describing your yard and your, growing plants in your yard and everything. And I'm just picturing Brandon's, like, his whole situation going on. So I'm just kind of curious, what's like the Charlotte herb scene kind of like?
Right. Good question. There is a lot going on in Charlotte and in North Carolina as a whole, actually. And when I moved back to Charlotte in 2014, so it's been 9 years for me, I was just really happy with all the activity that I saw and continue to see going on within the wellness, holistic health, herb scene. So there's much going on within North Carolina itself, because of course we have Asheville. 2 hours away.
Yeah.
But in Charlotte, there are a lot of people. There's several. Brandon, I haven't met Brandon personally, but I know of his work. But there's Brandon. There's a woman named Bria Buffalo, who owns an herb shop called Musa Moon. And she's an herbalist. I believe she went to MUIH. So she has a community. There's another woman who's a massage therapist as well and sells herbs. And I believe her business is called Five Goddess Farm, I believe. But there's her. There's, I know I'm missing some others. There's another named Raven Moon that's in Rock Hill, South Carolina, just down the street. So what I have found is that there's a lot of interest. There's people who study herbs. There's some people who are practicing with herbs. There's all within the integrative medicine space. You know, we have a good number of naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, Chinese medicine practitioners. So there's that realm. There's people, there's a whole vegan food movement. So where you find that, you find people's interest in herbs as well and plants. There's a herb grower called Celtic Frost Herbs. That's, I believe their land it's right outside of Charlotte, but they sell at the Charlotte Regional Farmers Market. So there's a really big, it's run by Mecklenburg County, I believe, that Charlotte Regional Farmers Market, huge farmers market. They're open Tuesdays through almost 7 days a week. They maybe take off 1 or 2 days, but on Saturdays is where you have a lot of local growers selling produce, but also people like Celtic Frost Herbs actually selling medicinal plants
Mm.
So that's really cool. So I've been pleased, yeah, with the scene in Charlotte.
Yeah, Asheville really is like a herbal mecca. I mean, it's up right up there with Eugene, Oregon, which is where I'm at right now. I have to say shout out to Derek Haynes too. He's called the Chocolate Botanist or the Crazy Botanist on Instagram. I
Mhm.
believe he's in Durham. But
Right.
yeah, I've actually never met Brandon Ruiz in person either. But I'm really looking forward to going to the Great Lakes Herb Fair because he's going to be teaching there, and I live over in Wisconsin now. So, yeah, so. So kind of staying in your past, I'm kind of curious, who were some of your like early herbal mentors or teachers?
Mhm. Well, definitely my teachers at the California College of Ayurveda. So that would be Dr. Mark Halpern, who's the
Mm.
main teacher and the founder there. There's also a woman who's the head of the herb department there. Her name is Brenda Igler. And she's an Ayurvedic practitioner, but also her main focus are the herbs and the herb department. So definitely them for sure, because that's kind of what got me started. And then after them is Smile Herbs, which is in Maryland, right outside of DC. And maybe a few years after I started my studies at the California College of Ayurveda, I went and took some modules of KP Khalsa's
Oh, nice.
herb program that at the time was being taught at Smile Herbs with Tom Wolfe and other teachers that he had on staff. And some of those teachers trained at the Maryland University of Integrative Health.
Mm.
So definitely Smile Herbs and KP Khalsa out of that. That's how I learned about KP. And so I've gone on and continued to study some of his work. I've also studied and continue to study Todd Caldecott.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Todd Caldecott. People who, because I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, I'm drawn to folks who merge both Ayurveda and Western herbalism, as well as some Chinese herbalism in there. So those, and then I started attending and then eventually teaching at the Southeast Wise Women's Herbal Conference, which now is no longer, but for several years in a row, like 2014, 2015, 2016, I was there. And so definitely attending conferences, all the different teachers that I've come across and taken their workshops through them and ongoing podcasts, studying books. Just, I find that a lot of people in the herbal world are nerds.
Me
Right.
included.
Right. Who love to learn, love to study, not only, practically like hands-on with the plants, but also all the knowledge that goes into it. So, the books and all of that. So and that's one of the things I love about the field, herbalism and holistic health, is that the learning is ongoing. Like there's so much rich knowledge to learn and to practice. So, but Todd Caldecott, the California College of Ayurveda, KP Khalsa, for sure, some of my big influences.
Yeah, I want to go on a little bit more on that in a second, but I have to ask, I thought I heard you say that the Southeast Wise Women Gathering is no longer going on. Is that true?
Right, that's true. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Karina Wood is the woman who I believe started it.
Mhm.
And right before the pandemic, I want to say 2019 was the last year. And she was trying to, I believe, sell the program and have somebody take it over, but I don't think anyone did. And then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So we haven't had it the past few years, but it was such a beautiful conference. I saw Rosemary Gladstar at that conference.
Mm.
Dr. Aviva Ram, she would teach there sometimes. A lot of different teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I did the events for Mountain Rose Herbs for almost a decade. So I've been to a ton of herbalism events, and I always heard that Southeast Wise Women had like 1,200 people go to that. They never let me go to that one for some reason, but yeah, that was a joke.
Right.
Okay. But I always heard
Right.
amazing things about it. I'll be curious to hear if it ends up becoming reinstated or whatnot. But I do have to say, I'm interviewing KP Khalsa on Friday, and he was actually the first herb class I ever took. He's literally right down the road from me right now. Like he's from Eugene, Oregon. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to him. I haven't seen him in several years. So great herbal mentor, I gotta say. So speaking of Ayurveda, I saw on your Instagram you gave 3 Ayurvedic tips for fatigue and chronic stress. Do you remember what those were?
One, I'm sure, was maintaining a regular routine.
Yep.
Because
It was,
that's one for calming vata.
yep.
And another for sure is slowing down. I talk
Yep.
about that a lot, just simply not rushing, which is something that we all, or at least people who live in metropolitan areas, I feel like we all have to be mindful of that, because it's just within our culture, at this time for everyone to be busy.
Yeah.
And doing things, but actually not rushing, like building time into your schedule to literally take your time. That affects your nervous system, which thus affects vata dosha. So that was one. And then what else did I mention?
It was kind of like it was very quickly mentioned, and it almost felt like a mic drop moment, but it was slow down was your first one, eat at the same time every day, and then the last one you just go and rest. And then I want to say, like, the video ended right there. And I was like, I just was wondering if you could kind of maybe give like a brief training for all of us on the 3 Ayurvedic steps for fatigue and chronic stress. Like, how do you see that, and why each one of those matters?
Right. Well, ultimately, for the most part, and for most people, even though, of course, Ayurveda is about looking at the individual, so there's little nuances for every person, but generally speaking, fatigue, chronic stress, for the most part, comes down to vata dosha aggravation. And vata are the qualities of cold, dry, light, excess movement. So excess movement, rushing, going, doing too much. And so the way to balance in Ayurveda is with the opposites. So if you have too much movement, too much rushing, going, thinking, too much coldness, dryness, lightness from things like eating cold foods, cold beverages. And so it all boils down to calming vata dosha, ether and air qualities. And so the slowing down is one of them, ways to do that opposite work. Resting, again, stillness, and giving your body time to rejuvenate itself and build back up what in Ayurveda, what we say is ojas, right? Your vitality, your overall immunity, ability to withstand stress. And regularity. So because vata is ether and air, so just to put it simply, you can think of vata as the wind, and how the wind blows around, moves around. It also moves kind of erratically somewhat, it blows here, it blows there. So that's variability. And so variability is associated with vata dosha. So in order to calm vata, you want regular routine. So regular routine calms vata dosha, and particularly regular routine around meal times. So eating ideally at the same times each day, and the time you go to bed and the time you wake up, keeping that consistent. And so that all helps to calm vata dosha. And in modern speak, or kind of what the buzzwords are right now, the nervous system, keeping the nervous system calm and grounded, and activating more so your parasympathetic nervous system rather than the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system. So that's ultimately what all those 3 tips were about. Was about calming the nervous system, which is calming vata dosha, which means bringing in more stability, regularity, which allows for more warmth. Yeah.
Yeah, as I was watching the video, I was appreciating that it wasn't necessarily what supplements or herbs you could take. It wasn't something like physical. It was all really kind of around slowing down and just like, resting. And I feel like that's underappreciated. I notice it's funny you talk about going to sleep at the same time and waking up at the same time every day. I notice no matter what time I go to bed now, I pretty much always get up at the same time. So it behooves me to go to bed earlier, because otherwise I know I'm going to be getting up at, like, say 7 a.m. every day.
Okay.
So does Ayurveda have any regimen around, like, say, bedtime or going to bed?
For sure. One of the things I work with clients on who's working around getting improved sleep is taking that concept of regular routine into how you get ready for bed. So one way I like to think of it is building a ritual for yourself. So just how you may have your morning routine of things you do in the morning, like, of course, brushing your teeth, but other Ayurvedic things like scraping your tongue, drinking some hot water with lemon. You also kind of want a routine for preparing for bed, which helps to get you calm and ready to have a good night's sleep. So things like, number one, either turning or shutting down or shutting off electronics, ideally 30 to 60 minutes before bed, which is basically, it's all about starting to bring down stimulation so that you can calm down and prepare for bed. So that would look like things like simply turning down the lights, that's something that's pretty easy to implement. So instead of having a bright overhead light on, dim down the lights. That helps you to get ready. If you can't resist the completely shut down electronics yet, turn down the volume on TV, for example, or make sure if you are consuming some kind of media, say 90, 60 minutes before bed, have it be something that's not a horror movie or that's not some kind of shoot 'em up violent type of something on television. Like, have something that's calm and that can, again, help you get prepared. Other tips are things like taking a warm bath, massaging the soles of your feet with a little warm oil, like sesame oil before bed. That one, actually, most people respond very well to massaging the soles of your feet with warm oil before bed. It can make a big difference.
Just a quick break from the show to let you know about our sliding scale, ever-expanding course called The Art of Frugal Nutrition. The goal of this course is to teach you how to eat nourishing foods on a budget. As I mentioned, it's a sliding scale, and it even slides all the way down to free. And what's more frugal than free? We add new modules with highly esteemed herbalists and nutritionists every few months, so it continues to grow, as with most projects here at HerbRally. If you'd like to learn more and register, head to herbrally.com/frugal nutrition. One more time, that's herbrally.com/frugal nutrition. All right, now back to the show. Oh, yeah, I need to heed some of this advice. For whatever reason, I started getting into this habit before bed, literally right before bed, playing chess. But it's not just chess, right? You'd think like that might be fine. But what's happening is I'm playing these timed 3-minute games. So it's very stressful in a sense. And it's on the computer screen or phone screen. And I'm not just playing one, I'm playing 30 to 60 minutes of online chess, quick games right before bed. And then I get in bed and I wonder, why can't I fall asleep?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I should not be stimulating. And a lot of this stuff just seems like common knowledge, but I'm like, it's one thing to know it, but then it's a whole nother thing to do it. So this is one of my favorite things about listening to podcasts, but also now participating and interviewing people, because I'm like, man, I need to take this advice because sleep, right. I would say, and Ayurveda probably says something similar. I would guess sleep is the foundational pillar to health.
Absolutely. Yes, there's 3 pillars of health in Ayurveda, and one of them is sleep for sure. Another is food, and another, brahmacharya, it's described different ways. So you may hear it different ways, but one way that is sometimes described is it's basically the conservation of your energy, or proper management of your energy. So that's one thing, but sleep is definitely one of the key pillars of health. Yeah.
You were talking about morning routine earlier, and I remember you mentioned lemon water. In fact, you mentioned warm water with lemon. I was kind of curious why warm water with lemon, and then if you want to kind of expound upon that, what are other parts to a good Ayurvedic morning routine?
Right. Well, a common tip is to help stoke what in Ayurveda is called your Agni, your digestive fire, is to drink on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, to drink a cup of hot or warm water. And it can be different ways. It could be one, just drinking a cup of warm hot water by itself. That can be helpful. 2, the lemon added. The idea again is that it's stoking your digestive fire. The thought is that it has a tendency to be actually alkaline once it's in the body, even though we think of lemons as acidic. And then even though it's still gentle enough for most people, for people who are maybe concerned about acidity or concerned about pitta aggravation, they may try a wedge of lime juice instead of lemon. For people who have more heaviness, more stagnation, kapha type of folks may add some ginger to it. So it may be hot water with lemon and ginger. So there's all the different types of ways to do that morning drink. But having, whether it be a cup of hot water or a cup of hot water with a wedge of lemon, the idea is that it's helping to stoke your digestion for the day, your digestive fire, which can also help you have promote healthy elimination and have work towards having a morning elimination every morning. That's the ideal, is like to have a morning, BM elimination.
I got no problems there. But I have to say, I realize this is probably like last year as far as like pop culture nutrition stuff goes, like the whole concept of, say, intermittent fasting or whatever like that. Does Ayurveda have any sort of thoughts on, from your knowledge, on say intermittent fasting or fasting in general?
That's a good question. There's definitely ways of using fasting throughout Ayurveda for different reasons. Ayurveda has its whole system of purification, which is called panchakarma, which is Ayurveda's approach and system to doing cleansing. But there's as I'm sure there's a whole lot of controversy as to when to use the term cleansing, when to use the term
sure,
detox, if it's good at all, that kind of thing.
Totally.
But Ayurveda has a system of panchakarma. So that includes sometimes a type of mono fasting on khichdi or khichdi, the classic Ayurvedic health food, if you will, of yellow split mung beans and rice. Oftentimes it's a white basmati rice. But that's one thing. But as far as intermittent fasting, the way, according to my training and knowledge, really Ayurveda already had it incorporated in its concept of the ideal times to eat, because ideally, all of this depends on the person, on a person's constitution, as well as their current state of imbalance. But a general principle is that you want to avoid snacking between meals. And so whether you're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, let's say at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 6 p.m., or you're eating two meals, say around 10 and then around 4:35 p.m. Regardless, if you're avoiding snacking between those meals, in essence, that's Ayurveda's version of intermittent fasting. To stop eating at least 3 hours before you go to bed. So let's say
that's gonna be tough for me.
Yeah, why is that? You tend to eat it late dinner?
So yeah, and in fact, I kind of want to get to this later, and sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know, maybe it's an American affliction or something. I just love eating, so I like eating food.
Okay, well, looking at you, I get a sense that you have some kapha in your constitution. Is that correct?
I would guess. In fact, I was going to ask you that in a few. I was like, how does one go about, finding out their constitution? I would guess I'm on the kapha spectrum for sure. I'm sure we're all a mixture of all three though, but
right. Exactly. Yeah. So yes, I'll come right back to that.
Sure.
But as far as the intermittent fasting piece, so if you were to stop eating at least 3 hours before you go to bed, let's say you plan to go to bed at 10, so then you'd want to be done with dinner by, say, about 6. And so if you're not eating anything from 6 p.m. until, say, 8 the next morning, or, then I do that's fasting, it's a form of fasting. And so there's definitely benefit to that. But as far as your question about how would one understand their Ayurvedic constitution, or what's called your prakriti, and I like to specify that versus saying what's your dosha. A lot of times, if you're reading about Ayurveda on the internet or so forth, folks will say, they just think of what's my dosha. But it's really important to understand that what you're trying to discern is what your constitution is, what your unique mind body type is, or what your prakriti is. That, and then you also want to know your vikriti, which is the current state of the doshas. So yeah, there's more that could be said
Sure.
there. But
Yeah.
the point is, how do you understand your constitution and what's going on currently? There are some online quizzes out there. I'm not a huge fan, but they can at least be somewhat helpful to at least start to explore. It all depends, because some of the quizzes are better than others. But it's important to know, oftentimes people will get confused, those two things, what their prakriti is, their unique mind body type that's set at conception and doesn't change, and what their vikriti is, the current state of the dosha. Folks will get that mixed up. And you want to know both, because your prakriti, your constitution, you can think of as your natural tendencies. Whereas the vikriti is what is going on right now, and that's what can get out of balance. That's what you may have excess of a certain dosha. And any of the doshas for any person can get out of balance or in excess. So ideally, so you can explore through online quizzes. I do like Banyan Botanicals, their online quiz. I think it's a really good one. And they do distinguish between your prakriti and your vikriti. But of course, I do think that a professional consultation is ideal, especially if you're having any confusion. Some people are easier to discern their constitution than others. But if there's any confusion, if you're dealing with something in particular that you really want help on, like a health concern or condition, working with a practitioner is where you really can get more specific, nuanced understanding of recommendations and things specifically for you.
Yeah, I was going to recommend TesiaLove.com. Book your 2-hour consultation with Tesia. She'll tell you all about it.
Right.
I have a few thoughts. One is in my early 20s, I was really experimenting with diet, and I went from, say, a standard American diet to vegetarian to vegan to raw vegan and fruitarianism to the next level where I was fasting all the time. I ended up becoming 170 pounds, which is very light for me. And then I decided to become an omnivore again. And I kind of don't really subscribe to any particular diet other than I try to do my best and whatnot. And but now I would say I'm very drawn to, say, a high protein, high fat type diet. But now I'm wondering, you keep talking about balance, and I'm kind of wondering, am I going too far in one direction now where I'm like constantly consuming, say, too much fat, too much protein? And is that messing with my quote unquote dosha, or what? I can't remember the word you used.
Prakriti, your constitution.
Prakriti. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, I'm wondering, I don't even know what I'm trying to wonder here, but I'm like, I feel like I'm getting too out of balance and far into this one way. And now I'm like hyper craving these super high fat foods all the time. And I don't know. I'm starting to think when I move back to Wisconsin, I'm like, I think I should start consuming like just way more vegetables and stuff again, if that makes sense.
Right, absolutely. That's a good point. Because especially if you're into health, natural health, people I find tend to go through the different types of dieting and foods and experiment with all of those things. But in Ayurveda, it is about, again, what your constitution is, so what's right for you, but also you have to take into account the different stages of life that you're in. So the different times of life will also correspond to the different doshas. So for example, childhood is kapha time. From about a little after puberty until, let's say for women, leading up towards menopause, that's pitta time. So midlife, that's pitta time for both men and women. And then from about age 50, 52, 53, somewhere in there and beyond, that's vata time of life. And so, yes, Pete, you have to take into account where you are. You have to take into account what you've been doing in the past to determine. And that's the beauty of Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, is that it's looking at your relationship with nature. So that's one of the things I say when explaining what is Ayurveda. Ayurveda is all about living in harmony with nature, your own unique nature, your constitution, and the nature around you. The time of day, the time of life, the seasons. So it does depend. And I've met a lot of people, peers, colleagues who studied Ayurveda and they said that, oh, I used to be vegan, or I used to be only eating very lightly. And then as they got older, they realized, oh, that didn't work for them. So then they started either eating some meats or eating things like taking in things like bone broth, some things that were more nourishing. So you do have to, I do believe that there's not just one way.
Yeah.
And you do have to, like I mentioned, take into account, where you are currently, as well as what your constitution is. And so if a person has a lot of kapha already in their constitution, yes, too many heavy, oily foods may take their kapha over the top.
I think I'm getting a little over the top here. Truly, I truly do. Yeah, I'm very curious. For whatever reason, this question came to mind. I know you specialize in Ayurveda. It sounds like you dabble with, say, Western herbalism and Chinese herbalism as well. Is that true, or?
That's true. I guess you could say that because of who my teachers, some of my teachers are, I use the Ayurvedic lens to look at all the different herbs. So Western herbs, and because I'm in the West, I'm in North Carolina, I have access to Western herbs. So I look at those herbs through an Ayurvedic lens as well. So yeah, because my teachers have been people who weave in all three of those traditions, Western herbalism, Ayurveda, and Chinese medicine, I kind of include that into my scope. More so Western herbalism and Ayurveda, a little bit PCM, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess that answers that part of the question. But I'm curious, as far as your clients who are coming to see you, are these people, they're just looking to get some help, and then are they drawn to the fact that you're an Ayurvedic practitioner, or are they just coming to you because you're an expert and through word of mouth from, say, their friends or whatnot, and then you just kind of guide them in the sense from your Ayurvedic lens? Or are these people coming to see you specifically because you're an Ayurvedic practitioner?
Good question. The majority of people, I would say the majority of my clients come to me because they have heard of Ayurveda, or somehow they're familiar with it and they want to apply more of it. Either because they're dealing with something that they want to see what the Ayurvedic approach can do for them. And then I do have a handful of people who just was looking for some type of natural health practitioner, and they found me and they chose me. But I would say the majority of people, they're specifically looking for Ayurveda, and that's how they find me. Yeah.
Gotcha. Very good. Well, yeah, I kind of want to, before we forget, we still got plenty of time, but I want to bring up your class that you're teaching with Maria Noel Groves. What's that all about, and when is that?
Right. So Maria, I met at this past year's American Herbalist Guild Symposium, and I taught a class there on the energetics of Ayurveda and client compliance, or how to keep in mind, constitutional types and energetics, and help your clients follow through on implementing recommendations and things, and just kind of understanding the mindset of different constitutional types. And so Maria, she sat in on that class and then invited me to teach a longer version of it for her upcoming advanced herbalist series of classes. So I'll be teaching a 3-hour class on the energetics of Ayurveda and client compliance. I don't really like the word compliance so much because it makes it sound like, do what I say, And that's not where I'm coming from. But, as a clinician practitioner, one of our jobs is to, how can we help assist the client to implement, the recommendations so that they get results. And so that's definitely something that I think a lot about, because that's what I have found to be one of the biggest challenges. Isn't so much the what to do, it's actually following through and doing it, because of all the different pressures that we have in modern life, like having 24-hour access to television and busy lifestyles and all of that. But anyhow, I'll be teaching this 3-hour course again on the energetics of Ayurveda and how that applies in clinical practice on May 4th. So next Thursday, May 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's a part of her Advanced Herbalist series. So there's a lot of different teachers that she has throughout this year teaching on different topics. And so that's one of the topics. And you don't have to sign up for the whole series. You can just sign up for that class or any of the other classes individually. It will be live, but there'll also be a recording. So if you can't attend, during the time that the virtual class is going on, you can access the recording to it. Yeah.
Do you happen to know how long the recording will be available if someone purchases it?
Good question. I'm not.
I can find that out too after the fact.
Yeah,
no
it
worries.
may be indefinitely.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that because I'm not sure. I want to say that I think it's indefinitely, but I could be wrong. It might be, but it's for a significant amount of time. It gives people, time enough to access it multiple times. Yeah.
Awesome. And just to clarify, you said you met Maria at the American Herbalist Guild Symposium?
Exactly. In 2022, this past October, it was in Bethesda, Maryland. Yeah.
So HerbRally is all about events, herbalism events. Like that's how we started. We've listed herbalism events on HerbRally.com since 2015, and that was kind of my way to give back to the herbal community because herbalism events transform my life. And I just got to say, like, if you're listening, go to an herbal conference. Seriously, you're going to meet so many amazing people, and this relationship that Tesia now has is with Maria is likely because she met Maria at that event. And yeah, I've made friends for life at herbalism events, and yeah, you're just going to be surrounded by a bunch of herb nerds just like us. So hey everyone, it's Mason. Just a quick interruption from the show to let you know about our 13 herbal freebies. If you go to HerbRally.com, on the navigation bar at the top of the page, you'll see a button that says freebies. Just click there and you'll sign up for our email newsletter, and in exchange we're offering 13 herbal freebies. That's ebooks, webinars, videos, downloadable audio, and discounts to cool herbal companies. So if you'd like to check out these freebies as well as sign up for our email newsletter, we update you about current events, new monographs, new videos, etc. Just go to HerbRally.com and click on the button at the top of the page that simply says freebies. Okay, that's it from me. Now back to the show.
Right. That's so true. I'm a big advocate of folks who are interested in this kind of work, especially if you're doing this work to evolve into a career or something that you do for your livelihood. For sure, attending the conferences, because like you said, you meet so many people. You learn, of course, so much from all the different classes that are taught. But yes, I've definitely met Maria through the conference. There's been other connections that I've made. I know you had mentioned Lucretia Van Dyke and some of, hopefully you'll be interviewing her at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think she lives in New Orleans now, and that's my favorite city. So I got to hit her up when I'm there.
Okay. Yeah. But Lucretia, she lived in Asheville, and then I believe for a time she lived in Charlotte, and we met here, and she's the person who helped me, who encouraged me and put the word out for me to teach at the Southeast Wise Women's Herbal Conference. So, and then through that, I met a lot of other people. So definitely attending the conferences is a big blessing. Yeah.
And pro tip, if you're in a lunch line with someone, just start talking to the person next to you. That's how I've met this herbalist named Heather Irvine, and now she's worked with HerbRally a bunch over the years. And yeah, it's just, it pays to be social, whether you're shy or not. So I've got a selfish question. I'm not sure if you have an answer or not. I'm guessing you've got some thoughts on it. So speaking of imbalanced kapha body type per se, I don't know. I was playing basketball the other day. I'm a lifelong basketball player. I've had ankle and knee issues over the course of my life, and it just so happens I went up for a rebound a couple weeks ago, and as I landed, my knee came out of place.
Oh,
wow. I'm probably gonna go see a doctor when I go back to Wisconsin and see what happened. But people are like, "Oh, maybe that was a meniscus tear." I have no way of knowing, other than it's been 2 weeks now and I'm still limping. It's getting better. I'm just curious. So I don't know if you've heard of this guy. His name's the knees over toes guy. And I'm starting to do a bunch of his protocol as far as like rehabilitating my knee and just strengthening everything around it. I'm considering going to a yoga studio, getting a membership at a yoga studio when I'm back in Appleton. And I'm just curious, does yoga have protocols or exercises that can help strengthen the knee specifically?
That's a good question, because immediately what comes to mind with that is yoga therapy.
Okay.
And so, well, a couple of things. One, definitely would go get it checked out by your doctor. I'm a big advocate of integrative medicine and integrative work, and that's how I work with people. I have some folks who come to me because they're a bit disenchanted with, Western medicine, but I'm always saying, make sure you go to your doctor, get a full evaluation and diagnoses and all of that, so what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But meanwhile, yes, yoga therapy. So you definitely have to be careful just going to any yoga studio, I would say.
Okay.
Or you want to make sure that whoever you're working with or talking to, that they're going to do or give you specific advice. But yoga therapy, which is using yoga practices, whether it be asana, postures, breath work, meditation, all the different aspects of yoga, but using that in a therapeutic way. And so, of course, because we're working with the body, you can use that structurally to help certain things. And so I've trained in yoga, and my 300-hour training was with a teacher named Lisa Moore, who's also an Ayurvedic practitioner here in Charlotte. And she teaches and focuses work that combines Ayurveda and yoga therapy from that focus. And so it's a gentle approach, and it's in some ways there's similarities with like physical therapy. So yoga can definitely be helpful for sure for rehabilitation and support for areas of our bodies that have been injured. Yeah.
Yeah, I really beat my body up early on. Like I said, I played a bunch of outdoor basketball specifically, and that's not good on the knees and joints. And I was really into like weightlifting and stuff early on. I'm realizing more and more stretching and yoga and all this stuff and preventative deep tissue, that kind of stuff is much more important than like getting a jog in or lifting some weights. So I definitely want to focus on that as I get older.
Right, absolutely. And like I mentioned, as we get older, you're moving more and more into the Vata time of life. And joint issues are often associated with Vata dosha. So yes, you want to be mindful of taking care of your joints and doing that. You can look at that through an Ayurvedic lens.
Love it. Do you have any favorite like Ayurvedic resources, say books or podcasts, that kind of thing?
Yes, there's a number of them. KP Khalsa's website and information for sure comes to mind. I love KP's work. The Ayurvedic Institute here in the US, Dr. Vasant Lad and the Ayurvedic Institute are highly regarded. And so, they have classes, online videos and things like that. So that's definitely a good resource. There's a number of podcasts out actually on Ayurveda now that I know a couple of years ago, I remember looking and there were only like maybe 3 or 4, and now there's many. So I can't think of the name exactly of one off the top of my head, but there's what's called a Vaidya, who's a Ayurvedic doctor trained in India, a BAMS doctor who has a podcast. I think it's called Ayurveda and Beyond, but that's one that I like and enjoy. So there's those. Dr. John Douillard with lifespa.com has an excellent website with lots of great information and resources about Ayurveda through there. Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to put even more on your plate. I think that you should have a podcast.
Thank you for that you think that. I thought about it a few years ago, of course, because my other background, before I moved full-time into this work, my other background is in marketing communications.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do love all things social media
Mhm.
and all of that, even though I don't have as much time as I would like to put
Sure.
into it. But I thought about it, but as I'm sure you know, it's a lot of work,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
A lot of work, and if I did it, I would want to be consistent. So
Yeah.
lately, I've just kind of focused on being guests on
Sure.
podcasts. But who knows? I might at some point.
The Tesia Love Wellness Podcast.
Maybe so.
Speaking of which, yeah, listener, go follow Tisha on Instagram at Tisha Love Wellness. And yeah, I was going to ask you also about all the different ways you make your living as an herbalist, because yeah, I was kind of joking, but also kind of serious about you starting a podcast. I think it'd be awesome, but at the same time, I know you are busy. You do a lot. You wear lots of different hats, so I'm just kind of curious if you could tell the audience all the different ways you make your living as an herbalist and everything else you do.
Right, sure. Because I know there are a lot of people who are exploring, herbalism is really booming right now. I think there are a lot of training programs out there. And so people are looking into how they can possibly, turn this into a livelihood for them.
Yeah.
And there are many avenues from doing consultations and such to making products and so forth. But yeah, so what my career so far, it's definitely been a journey, a work in progress over time, and it's evolved. Because so now I am to where this is my full-time work. And what I do primarily are, because I'm a licensed massage and bodywork therapist, and I got my massage license in order to be able to do the Ayurvedic body therapies. So Ayurveda has a whole suite of different body treatments, massage and body work. So I do that. That's one big piece of my work, are doing mostly Ayurvedic body treatments, but also some prenatal, postpartum massage, energy work like Reiki, and Marma therapy, which is Ayurveda's system of acupressure points, if you will. So that's one, the body treatments, the consultations. So I do one-on-one consultations with clients. And then I want to do more online work. So perhaps an online course or program. So that's another that I'm working on doing more of. Teaching. So doing classes like what I'm doing for Wintergreen Botanicals, and Maria's program, and I'm teaching at conferences. I did a little bit of teaching with KP Kasa's school, and I teach also for Banyan Botanicals for their Living Ayurveda internship program. I teach a couple of their courses for that. So body work, consultations, teaching, online offerings, which I want to do more of. And I've thought about possibly product making, but the thing, of course, you have to do, or what I'm trying to be mindful of also is streamlining or focusing, energy, because you only have so much energy, right? Within the day. But those are kind of the things that I do. As far as the yoga, for the most part, my yoga is within the context of my consultations. And so one-on-one therapeutic yoga that comes out of what's recommended based on their consultation. That's how I work with people. I don't teach any group classes right now.
Wow. So when someone comes and sees you for a consultation, you're actually giving them one-on-one instruction on what particular yoga exercises they should be focusing on?
Right. So
wow.
When I do so my consultations are really thorough, which is why the initial consultation is 2 hours. For some people, it may take a little bit less, but about 2 hours. So, and we're taking a full look at health history, current habits and tendencies, past habits and tendencies, and then taking their pulse, looking at their tongue if we meet in person, but I also work with people virtually. And then from there, I put together a plan for them of recommendations on how to help to bring about balance or to bring down whatever the doshas that are in excess, how to do that. And so those recommendations may be around food, it may be herbal recommendations, lifestyle recommendations, but also yoga practices. So whether it be asana, different pranayama, breathwork practices, sometimes meditation, other things like vaginal steaming, which is, I group that in with bodywork / herbalism as well. And then also recommending them certain body therapies, because certain body treatments are for particular dosha types or dosha conditions. So recommending those. Yeah. And then the coaching aspect, which again, the coaching aspect is all about helping someone actually to implement and to get the change that they want to see.
Compliance.
Right, exactly.
Do what I tell you to do.
Right. Or helping them to at least kind of put away their motivations, you know, and to understand the obstacles that are getting in the way and what they can do to kind of overcome those obstacles.
I swear I've been having my daughter be my accountability buddy lately. And basically anytime I feel like you're accountable to someone else, your compliance just gets raised that much more. So it's a great work you're doing. You're getting people healthier and keeping them compliant. I love it. I was curious if you use oil pulling at all.
Right, I do. I don't do it every day for myself. I probably should do that actually, because it also, oil pulling is actually really good for your voice as well.
Really?
Yes, it can be nourishing. And lately, if you feel like you have a dry voice or anything like that, like the tissues of your vocal cords seem a bit strained, gargling, oil pulling with oil, like sesame oil, can actually help that. But yes, and then I recommend it sometimes for clients also. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just curious. It came up the other day. I was like, oh, right. I remember that was like a trend in like 2017, at least in my corner of the world. But so this is a plant show. I'm curious, are there any herbs that you're kind of in love with right now? You could name one or two if you are.
Yes, absolutely. Because, I'm a gardener as well for my own learning and just the love of it. And yes, so quick little, not necessarily a story, but just something to share is that I'm really blessed to have access to a variety of ways to work with the plants. So like I mentioned, I live in an apartment, so I have my balcony, which I grow some shade loving house plants there. And then I have my vegetable and herb garden that's at my parents' house. And so I have vegetables, like typically I grow things like tomatoes, cucumbers and such. Green beans, but I have an herb section where I'm growing some perennials like comfrey, rosemary, peppermint, lemon balm. I just bought a skullcap plant, which I've grown before, but I'm looking forward to growing it again in a bigger space, motherwort. But the thing that I'm really excited about right now is that across the street from my parents, my neighbor who I grew up with for years, or grew up knowing, she was like a second mother or aunt, if you will. She passed away about 3 years ago, and she was a big time gardener. She had turned her entire backyard into a vegetable garden. I mean, the whole thing into a vegetable garden. And then she had flower gardens all in the front. And we used to talk about plants all the time, and she would help me in my garden, and we look and talk about the plants in her flower beds. And like I mentioned, she passed away. And so over the past 3 years, her gardens have they've become overgrown. Her family, doesn't really know what to do with them and so it was just on my heart this year. I asked them if I could to garden in her flower beds in her memory. So for the past 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks now, that's what I've been doing, is spending a lot of time cleaning up the beds. It's been a lot of work, but I've really enjoyed it. And definitely am remembering her. Her name was Minnie, but remembering her as I work. But so I've gotten most of the beds. I still have some work to do, but I've gotten them cleaned up, the front beds, which are the flower beds. And what's blooming there now are irises, and they're gorgeous. All different types of irises. Irises and peonies are what I'm seeing the most. Some roses are coming out now. And so one of my new interests that I'm just now starting to learn more about are flower essences. And so between already kind of having my interest peaked about flower essences, and then now working more so with the flowers, that's really what's speaking to me right now. Irises and the peonies and the roses. And last week, I accidentally broke one of the irises. So I had this beautiful iris bloom that broke off. So I put it in a bowl of water. and I let it sit there for about a day. And so just kind of playing with it. I haven't used the water in any way yet or anything like that, but the smell of just the water, wonderful. And I looked up irises as far as the flower essence, and it said that iris flower essence was for helping spark creativity. And it could be used for anyone who might not know, flower essences are capture the vibrational energy or essence of a plant, and they can be used more so on a subtle level in various ways. But irises are for helping to spark creativity, whether it be in your work. And so that's something that's speaking to me right now, are irises.
I feel like many would be so stoked to know that you're making flower essences out of her irises.
I think so. But yeah, it's definitely been a beautiful experience gardening. That's, again, the beauty of how we, use plants and working with nature, spending time in nature. Yeah, I love it, because in that example, I'm, remembering my close dear friend and working with the plants that we both loved, at the same time.
It's good timing. I don't know if I told you this or not, but you were my second interview today, and I interviewed this guy named Wolf earlier, and we were talking about how I need to get back into drawing, and all I really need is like that creative spark of energy to come back to me. And I'm like, shit, maybe I'll go buy some iris flower essence or something.
Right,
like that.
maybe so. Maybe so.
I love that. Thanks for sharing the story. I love asking that question. Yeah, there's usually a pretty good story associated with it. So yeah, and I brought this up earlier. I was wondering if you had a quick anecdote regarding, say, Southern cooking and combining that with Ayurveda. And I asked because I saw you post on your Instagram this like shrimp and grits, but you kind of gave it a even your description, you were like, you used descriptors like a bitter and pungent, and I'm kind of wondering if you're thinking of your food as medicine, but you're still like incorporating some of your traditional cooking ways.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's important too, when working with other traditions like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, if you're, an American in the US or in the American South or any other culture that's your own traditional culture that you grew up with, I think it's important to combine both.
Yeah,
Ayurveda doesn't mean eating Indian food per se.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's what I do, is that for my own life, as well as when I'm working with clients, is what Ayurvedic cooking is about really is applying the concepts of the six tastes and of looking at food through the lens of the five elements and the doshas, understanding that framework for looking at food, but that can be applied to any type of food. And so in that instance, or that example of the shrimp and grits, that's nourishing, it's warm, it's sweet, it's right, warm, sweet, nourishing, which pacifies Vata dosha. But with that dish, I also served some collard greens that I had grew in my garden and cooked up the collard greens. And so the collard greens are definitely that bitter taste. And the bitter taste, when cooked, is nourishing as well. It doesn't aggravate Vata. Raw bitter taste or raw vegetables can aggravate Vata. But when cooked using with some carminative types of herbs, like in any of my greens, I like to use cumin, coriander in the seasoning. That helps to make it more digestible and pacify gas and that kind of thing. But using the lens, the idea of the six tastes. So in Ayurveda, when looking at the energetics of whether it be herbs or plants, food, we're looking at it through the six tastes. Salty, sweet, sour, pungent, astringent, and bitter. We're looking at the six tastes, and the six tastes also correspond with, they do something with the doshas. So for example, sweet is water and earth. So it's going to raise kapha type of qualities, heaviness, sweet. And ideally you want all six tastes represented within a meal or present in a meal. But only certain portions of it, do you want some more than others, depending on your constitution or what it is that you're trying to impact. So that idea of the sweet taste, the sixth taste, again, I apply to no matter what I'm cooking. So when it comes to traditional foods that I grew up on, like example, the shrimp and grits or collard greens, I'm still looking at that. Me personally, I'm not like a strict vegetarian or vegan, or I'm more so focused on fresh foods. I want fresh foods. I want plenty of vegetables, but ideally I want foods that are cooked. That's definitely a Ayurvedic Chinese medicine principle, things that are easier to digest. So no matter what I eat, sometimes I'll use the example of mac and cheese. Now, I don't make it a habit of eating mac and cheese all the time because, of course, it's heavy. It's difficult to digest. So it can be, kapha aggravating. If you don't digest well, it can promote what in Ayurveda is called ama, which is toxicity in the body, usually as a result of poorly digested food. So it's not something I eat all the time, but because it's within my tradition, within family gatherings, things like that, sometimes I'll indulge in a little. So how can I eat a little mac and cheese every now and then in a way that I digest it well? One of those ways is portion size. So eating just, some, not too much, with what I eat it with. So I'll make sure I have plenty of green vegetables when I eat it. I don't just have a plate full of, say, rice and mac and cheese and dinner rolls. That's too much of the sweet taste. So I want to bring in more bitter taste. And I want to have it with the pungent taste. So I may make sure I have plenty of black pepper on it. That helps to add to its digestibility. That I have other types of seasonings and spices used in my cooking that's helping to digest the food. So all of that way of looking or paying attention to the taste, the qualities, the energetics of what I'm eating is how I can apply it to traditional foods that I grew up with and eat in a way that's good for my body.
I love that. Good answer. And I want to say one of the hashtags you used was better than takeout. And part of that is because you get to control what you put in it. I'm also really thrilled to tell Amanda that, because she loves mac and cheese, I'm going to tell her that Tesia says it's an Ayurvedic staple.
Oh, I didn't say that. Other practitioners will probably come and get me. But she can have it here and there, make sure she uses, some digestive herbs to help. And
yeah, that's right. That's right.
With it.
She does take her bitters, so that's good. Well, very good. Just one more main question, and then we'll talk about where to find more about Tesia and all that. But basically, we've been ending the show asking herbalists what's their big why? Why do they do what they do? And what keeps you learning and growing?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, my big why. I kind of have a number of whys. I would say my big why is definitely to be of service. So to be of service, and that comes in a variety of ways to help others, for sure. Whether it be through teaching them about Ayurveda, which of course I'm a practitioner and have studied it and love it myself. So I'm a believer that it can be of benefit to other people. And so I want to share that with other people in a way that works for them. Like I'm not a strict by the book or overzealous, and that's fine for some folks who are like that, but I'm more so about how can you apply truth to a way that works for your own culture and for you. And I view Ayurveda as is speaking truth, is sharing a way of understanding health that is true for everyone, no matter where you are or who you are. So it's a way of looking at things. So sharing that knowledge to be of service and to help others is definitely my big why. And another why, well, to back up a little bit, that why I believe is also connected on a spiritual level. It's like, what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why do I have the talents and gifts that I have? What are they for? And they're to help others. So for me, it's a spiritual purpose as well as an altruistic one. But also there's a little bit of selfish why too. Sure. The selfish why is that I want to do work that I love. right?
Yeah.
That I want to spend my time in a way that I feel like I'm using all of my talents and skills. And that's enjoyable and that allows me to have a good life. And so I do love self-employment and entrepreneurship, despite its challenges, which
Sure.
there are lots of challenges. But I do love that. And I love the flexibility in some ways of time that this lifestyle of working as a self-employed holistic health practitioner / herbalist / Ayurvedic practitioner, that it's afforded me time to be available to my family, when needed. It's afforded me the ability to be out in nature like I love. So to be of service, to fulfill what I see as my purpose, and also to have a good life that helps to keep me healthy as well.
Amen. Yeah. I got to say, I'm learning as I get older more and more that being selfish is actually the best way to be selfless. Having self-love, you're really able to then help others way more. If you don't have love for yourself, it's going to be very difficult to help others. So you be as selfish as you want. I don't think I've ever had a chance to ask someone from Charlotte this, but one time I visited Charlotte in my early 20s, and I was way more hippied out. I had like long hair, probably a longer beard, and I wore toe shoes and I looked like a freak. But I remember I was wearing a hat and I went to this like really cool rooftop concert. I want to say it was like a Led Zeppelin cover band or something like that. And before I went in, the person told me I had to take my hat off. And I was like, that would never happen in Oregon. Is Charlotte like a really formal place?
Interesting. That is an interesting question because Charlotte has changed a lot.
Mhm.
So Charlotte, of course, is in the South. We're right on the border with South Carolina. And so the Charlotte that I grew up in is not quite the same now. The Charlotte that I grew up in, definitely a bit conservative, some people describe it as a sleepy mid-sized town. It's actually the biggest city in between Atlanta and DC. But it's grown tremendously over the past probably 15, 20 years. And within just the past 5 years, really just within the past 1 year, it's exploded. As far as people have moved here from all over. I think the pandemic had something to do with that. Like a lot of people, a lot of New Yorkers have moved down here, people from the West, from Chicago, I've met people who've moved out here from Oregon. So, and it's, I believe, one of the hottest real estate markets right now in the country. And so, because it's drawn a lot of people from other places, it's not quite as conservative as it probably was, or as formal as it was then. Not as quite. It still is in some ways.
Sure.
It's definitely not California, but it has evolved quite a bit, and people who are interested in a number of things, which is why I think it's been good for me as an Ayurvedic practitioner, is that I've had a lot of people who've moved here and wanted to see, does Charlotte have, someone offering Ayurveda? Oh, they do. And so that's been good. So Charlotte has evolved. It's becoming more and more of a bustling city, actually.
Yeah, it probably was 15 years ago when I visited specifically. And I wasn't trying to throw shade at Charlotte. In fact, I always say North Carolina is probably one of those states that I would probably want to live in if we didn't just move to Wisconsin. But yeah, I love Asheville, and I really enjoyed my stay in Charlotte. I just thought it was funny that I had to take my hat off.
Right.
I was like,
yeah.
my head of hair looked way worse than my hat. But yeah. So well, thank you for joining me on the Herbalist Hour. I want to plug the class one more time. So I'm guessing to sign up for your class with Maria Noel Groves, you'd go to wintergreenbotanicals.com.
Right. So she has it listed on wintergreenbotanicals.com. You can find it there. I have it listed on the events page at my website, so you can access the link through my website as well.
Sure. So yeah, and again, that's tesialove.com. And again, on Instagram at Tesia Love Wellness. And yeah, go give her a follow there on social media. And thanks y'all for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. You take care.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the HerbRally podcast.
If you'd like to hear more from us here at HerbRally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from HerbRally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.